Up until now, I never reviewed a Range Rover product on Car Babble, so when my friend said, do you want to have a shot of my Range Rover Velar R-Dynamics HSE 240D, I was like, okay, let's do that. And I was particularly curious to see what this would be like, mainly because he absolutely hates it. Now, I just want to make a wee disclaimer at the start of this video, because the minute you say anything negative about a car that somebody owns and loves, they just instantly can't be objective about what you're saying, even if you base it on obvious evidence. They just want to dislike your video and say that you're wrong. So hopefully people can think about that before they do that, because I am going to be quite critical of this car in a lot of areas. And yeah, if you have had a really good ownership experience with this car, you're going to be like, what's he talking about? So just going to put that out there. But the most common sector of cars that I've reviewed on my channel has been the premium mid-size SUV segment. I've reviewed most of this car's competitors, so check them out on my channel. I'll leave a link to a couple. But the BMW X3, the Mercedes GLC, the Audi Q5, the Jaguar F-Pace, the Volvo XC60, to name a few, are going to be ones you might think about if you're buying this car. But in this particular review, I want to talk mainly about this pre-facelift, the 2019 that this is, and the fact that this is a used buy, because since it's been facelifted and they made some changes, they probably addressed quite a lot of the problems that will be mentioned as well. So I want to talk about this mainly as a used buy and generally this age of car. So if that sounds good, don't forget to like and subscribe, otherwise buckle up. Let's get into it. So this video, I'm going to be focusing mainly on this higher displacement 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel, which is the 240D, and it's the HSE spec, so it's the top spec in terms of toys. So that's good, because it means I've got a lot of things to play with and try out as well to tell you about. But you can get a smaller displacement 2-litre diesel, which is the D180, and you can also get 6-cylinder ones, a V6 one, and then you can also get petrols too. So there's a lot of engine choices, which is good because that means it compares really well and stacks up against a lot of its German rivals, who also offer lots of different powertrains. So that is decent, unlike a Volvo where you've got basically one diesel engine, which is 4-cylinder, or you can go plug-in hybrids now, or petrols, but they don't have nearly the range and no 6 cylinders at all. So as far as that goes, it's decent. So let's go out on the road first of all and talk about that. So let's start with the good stuff. And one of the main things is that it's quite quiet in here. Even at high speeds, I'm not hearing a lot of noise coming in the cabin. And so you can have a chat with your passengers at high speeds without really having to shout. I'm not hearing a lot of noise coming from the wing mirrors, even though they're quite big and great visibility, but they're very big. And also the road, and this road is an absolute joke to drive on. So yeah, it's reasonably quiet underfoot. So really happy with that. Acoustically it's good, and given you've got a really good Meridian upgraded sound system as well, that really helps the sound experience be just that little bit better. So that is a good start. What's also good is the suspension is very soft, even with these 21-inch rims which you get with the HSE, and it generally irons out the bumps pretty well. Do feel the odd little like friction, but it's generally pretty soft. And yeah, for those size of rims, I would say a bit of a result in terms of ride comfort. You can get adaptive air suspension. I think it's standard on the V6. This doesn't have it, and that might have been a good thing to see what it would be like. But overall, for long distance cruising and with passengers, they're going to find the ride comfort really quite soothing. So that is good. Sometimes though, when a car is very comfortable over bumps, the trade-off is that it doesn't handle very well, and I hate to say it, but that's where the problems really start. It feels like I'm driving a boat. It's really not very good in the bends, and just generally the chassis is not very firm and tight, and so it's not set up to be a sporty car. That's not going to be groundbreaking news for you, being it's a Range Rover product, but it's just really off balance, I think. And it's not even just like going around corners at speed I don't want to do. Even when I go to take a bend or a junction at low speed, I can feel the weight transfer in a really awkward manner, and it just feels really off balance. I'm like, oh, that is not nice. And so generally I just think the handling side of things is pretty poor for a car of this price. The steering is pretty light, and that'll be great around town, but at speed and in the bends it's a bit unresponsive. And again, another reason why you're not going to really want to throw this around bends and have a really good time with it on a country road. But you can put it into sport mode with the rotary gear selector, which I'm not a massive fan of, to be honest, but as far as they go, it's actually not a bad one. I just don't like that style of gearbox to use with my hand. But yeah, you do stiffen up a little bit when you're in sport mode, and it just makes it heavier basically. So it's really not a great car for steering, and it's brother or sister or cousin or whatever you want to call it, the Jaguar F-Pace is way better for that. And considering this is a off-roader, you know, the all-wheel drive system will definitely be good, but I just feel like the grip isn't that great because it just handles so poorly. I'm sure though it'll win back a lot of points if you were to go up a steep hill in slippy conditions. You've got hill descent mode as well as a button, and it'll be better than its rivals in a lot of those sort of areas. But when it comes to just on-road manners, I just am encouraged to do anything fun in this car whatsoever, and so I'm just going to sit back, relax, get my seat in the right position, get my nice sound system going on, and just get from A to B. So this being the 240 has slightly more performance, 240 brake horsepower to be precise, and 500 newton meters of torque, and you do notice the torque, and so it's good in that regard. If you load this thing up with all your stuff, it's going to handle it pretty well going up a hill, let's put it that way. Overtaking isn't really much of a problem, but 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds is definitely ample, but it doesn't feel like a fast car, and I wouldn't expect it to. And if you really want that, then you want to be looking at getting one of the 6 cylinders or even the bonkers supercharged V8, because that's when you're going to see a lot more performance. But with this one, it's good enough. So this car's got an 8-speed torque converter automatic, which is what you get in all the Velars, and I'm glad it's got that. I like torque converter gearboxes. It meshes the gears together pretty well. Reliability is probably not going to be a huge concern with that, but it's a little bit jerky at low speeds. However, yeah, once you're up at speed, it gets on in this business fine, so I haven't got any major issues there. And the fuel economy, well, it's going to vary depending on which model you go for massively, but with this higher displacement 2-litre diesel, 36.8 mpgs it's saying over, I don't know how long a period, to be honest, maybe since refueling, which would technically not be a very fair test of that, but I think that's probably roughly what it would get in the real world over a long period of time in mixed driving. You'll definitely get in the 40s if you were doing motorway journeys, and that's where a diesel really is great, because you'll get 600 miles probably easily out of a tank, so you don't have to worry about charging and all that sort of nonsense. And yeah, that's reasonably good fuel economy for a car of this size and weight. I would take that. Visibility is not too bad. Big wing mirrors, interior mirrors frameless, which I like. The back window a little bit squashed, but yeah, you've got enough visibility there, and the B pillar is a little bit thick, but overall I've got no problems with any of that. And you've got a really high res rear view camera, so parking this thing is not going to be a problem. I do like the fact that in this HSE spec you're getting adaptive cruise control. That's definitely a reason to step up to that grade, because that's just always a great function to have, and on long journeys just set it up and, you know, take the strain out of braking and accelerating. That is ace. I don't really have time to properly test it out today, so I can't really say for sure if it's actually a very good system compared to others, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt and say it is. One thing this car does have is adaptive LED headlights, which I would love to try out, but it's far too bright for that. So I'm going to take the owner's word on this one, and he says they're crap, and he basically doesn't use them because he can't rely on them to dip their beams quick enough. Dazzles oncoming traffic, finds it an absolute nightmare, so he doesn't use them. And that really annoys me, because if I was thinking about buying this car, well, I would always want to have that as a feature in a car, but if I was to know it didn't work, I would not buy the car for that, because it's one of the top reasons I would want a car. I love that feature, and if it doesn't work, that's just unacceptable. Even from a 2019 car, there's no excuse for things like that not working properly. In my 2017 Volvo S60, it worked flawlessly, so there's no reason why that shouldn't work and be reliable, and if it isn't, that's just poor quality. And so yeah, that's really annoying, and I'd love to know if other people have had that issue with this car, but I think that's quite an important one, because that's a feature I would want to have in a car, and yep, I just wouldn't buy it if it doesn't work. So when I first saw this car, I was like, oh, those seats look really sumptuous and comfortable, and then I sat in them and I went, they're not actually that soft. And so I was a bit disappointed with that. It's got major different ways of electrical adjustment and memory as well. And so yeah, you can set it up very, very nicely around your body. But I have to say, as I've driven it longer, I've found it quite comfortable. I've kind of started to get a bit kind of sunk into them now, and I do find them reasonably comfortable. So I think for long journeys, they're going to do the business pretty well. I do think the thigh extensions could be a little bit longer though, and I haven't got very long legs, so if you were quite tall, you might be wanting for more in that front. But overall, yeah, I think these are pretty good. Hearing a bit of a strange sort of vibration coming from under the steering wheel. I'm not quite sure what it is, because there's no like key jangling or anything, because it's got keyless start, but yeah, it's making a slight vibration at points. I'm not really sure what that is, but could be some loose trim or something. Now, before I talk about the boot, let me just say that the rear view camera is exposed and not hidden, therefore it's going to need cleaned quite a lot. So that's not ideal, but most car manufacturers cheap out on finding a solution to keep it protected. So yep, it's just got to be called out though, doesn't it? Anyway, this does have a electric tailgate. As you can see, sometimes when I've pressed it, it's not actually opened first time, but maybe just didn't use enough thrust with my fingers. This is quite a good size boot. 558 litres with the seats up, 1731 with the seats down, and they split 40-20-40, which is really useful. Put the middle seat down, put something long through, and still have a couple of kids in there or 2 seats. And to put the seats down, you've got to go around the side and do it manually, which isn't ideal, but a few tie down points. You've got 12 volt, this has got an electric tow bar as well. Overall, I think this is a really decent sized boot. Be interested to see then how much rear passenger space there is in comparison, but compared to its rivals, this is a good boot, and I think it'll do most families. The way I see it is this car is basically a 4-seater. It's not very wide back here, and so somebody sitting in this middle seat's not going to have as comfy or as wide a seat as the outer two, and there's quite a big transmission tunnel too. So it's not really a 3-seater back here, and if you're really tall, it could be an issue as well, but seats in my driving position, I'm 5'9", and that's how much knee room I've got. It's not cavernous, but it's not too bad. I do have my seat quite low down, so tow room isn't amazing, but I've seen better generally for tow room. However, you can electrically recline these seats a bit, so that's kind of cool, and that way you can prioritise boot space a little bit as well. But if you can stretch out a bit, that makes a difference for taller people. Headroom isn't too bad, but again, people over 6 feet might be getting a little bit tighter, and this pan roof does eat into headroom as well. You also have a centre armrest, and that bit there for your elbow is super soft, so that's great. But if you put your elbow forward, it's going into these cup holders. But they do have nice little rubbery bits on them to hold drinks in place, so that's not too bad a solution. The elbow point in the door though is actually quite hard, and I mean, if you put your arm like that, you can put it in there, but if you have your arm up like that, it just comes out because it recesses in under the door. So that's not really the best design. The door bins are, yeah, they're not totally plasticky in the bottom, but they're not rubber mats or felted either, so things could rattle about and they're a bit of an awkward shape. So you will get a bottle in there as long as it's not too big a bottle. And then you've got air vents here, a 12 volt. These airplane style pockets in the back look pretty expensive. And Isofix now are 2 seats, easy to get to. Clips come off when they've been removed, so they're easy to get to, particularly in this car. Pan roof gives lots of light in the cabin as well, although these windows are quite high up, so little kids might be peeking out a little bit. But overall, it's pretty good back here, but it's not the biggest in the segment. Now I've had to put the engine on because the battery was showing it was getting low, so I'm just going to get that ticking over a bit so I don't hand the car back dead. That would be a bit embarrassing. But I want to talk briefly about the looks of the car, which is not something I like to speak too much about because it's one of those things, it's like, yeah, you can see it for yourself. Let me know in the comments, even though nobody's ever to date, ever actually let me know in the comments what they thought about the looks of a car I'm reviewing. But in my opinion, and looks are totally subjective, this is a really nice looking car. I think all Range Rovers are very stylish and timeless looking, and this to me feels more like a baby Range Rover, maybe one that had a piano knocked on its head, as opposed to a bigger Evoque, if you get what I mean. It is a lovely proportioned car, it's got a real presence, and in the HSE spec with these 21-inch rims, chrome touches, etc., it just looks really, really nice from the outside. So I'm a big fan of the looks, but that's not the whole picture. Now the interior of this car definitely looks very nice, and this interesting design with this screen at the top here, which pokes out at an angle once you turn it on, is all right, and it's not very colourful, but yeah, it looks pretty crisp graphics. And then you've got this big touchscreen area below for your air conditioning and other features that you can do with the car as well. A lot of piano black, which I don't like, and you can definitely see a lot of the scratches on it already. So it looks tatty very quickly, and if it's not very clean, it smudges and all this sort of stuff. So I'm not a fan of piano black. I don't think any car reviewer ever has said they love piano black, but it looks nice at a glance. But when you look closer, yeah, you see a lot of the scratches and, you know, fingerprint marks and stuff like that. So you got to really keep it clean and keep your nails trimmed as well. The steering wheel is pretty expensive feeling and quite nice in the hands. It's not as squidgy as like a BMW's one, but it's pretty nice. There's a lot of buttons on each side that do loads of different things, like your, you know, track, skip, volume up, down, phone, etc., voice control on the left. And the right side, you've got your cruise control settings and adaptive cruise, hallelujah. So there's loads of stuff there, but they just feel really cheap and plasticky. They remind me of a Volvo's buttons, and yeah, I just don't like them either. I just think that kind of plastic just feels really cheap and not befitting of a Range Rover product. But the build quality in general is a real mixed bag. I mean, that's solid in the middle, and the door close, that's a really good solid door close, so that's decent. The indicators also feel really well damped too, so all that's good. But then there's like bits of plastic trim that just feel like they're not really balanced very well with other bits, and yeah, they just feel kind of cheap. So it's just like you've done some things really well, and you've got these expensive leather seats, and then you've got these bits of plastic trim that just make it look really cheap. I don't really know why they did that. You know, there's other materials you could use that would not cost that much more, that would definitely look better in this car. The cubby side of things is not bad, but not great either. Door bins they've got rubber mats on the bottom, but they're not massive. You will get a bottle in there, a squeeze, but it's not really designed for putting a bottle in. So if you have a big bottle, you're gonna probably want to put it in the middle. And you've got a cup holder here, which does have rubbery bits that really hold the drink in almost too good, actually. It's not very deep either. And then if you press here, you open up the spit, there's another one. So great, you've got cup holders, and then you can lift these up, and there's two here, and inside there's a felt lined bin that you can put stuff in. Plus it's got connectivity, it's got a micro SM card and a 12 volt and 2 USB ports. So that's okay. You can also slide these forward and back, which then obscures the cup holder area and the little tray bit that you can put your key. You've got a bit under the back of the floating console infotainment, you can put your sunglasses or something. There's no sunglasses holder up there. And then you've got a reasonably good sized glove box that's felt lined. So it's all right for cubbies, but it's definitely not class leading. But this infotainment system is one of the big things that I've kind of thought, it just doesn't really work. It's just overly complicated, and it's not very bright, and you know, it just feels all quite dark. And the buttons are not that big, and it's clear graphics, but it just seems overly complicated to use and to know where to go on the move, you know? I'm like, just don't reinvent the wheel. The old school folder structure like you got in a BMW, why can't you just do that? You know, even if you don't use a rotary controller, which would be amazing to go with it. Okay, you've got a rotary controller, but it's for your gear stick. But the whole thing is just like on the move, there's just a lot of little buttons to press, and it's just not that easy to use. And then your air conditioning stuff down here, it's this big touch screen pad. And yeah, you can change functions on it, but they've gone with these big rotary dials for your temperature, and I commend them for at least giving you that, for quickly changing the temperature. But there's just a lot of buttons that are in a position that you're really taking your eyes off the road to look at. There's a little bit of lag with the system. It's actually taken a while to get loaded up when I've turned the car on as well. Yeah, I'm just not that inspired by it. It's probably one of these ones that after a bit of time I would probably find it less of an issue, but as a first impressions, I'm like, it's just overly complicated. You've also got this really nice digital cockpit, which you can customize and put your sat nav in, and the graphics are crisp, and I've got absolutely no complaints on that front. As I've said before, I don't want to be one of these car reviewers that just reels off the spec sheet. I'll leave a link to some information where you can learn about that. But suffice to say, this car is not missing many toys. It's got the main things I would want. It's got a really good sound system, electric seats, it's got an upgraded stereo, it's got adaptive cruise control. They're the things I really want, and it's also got adaptive LED headlights. Although, barring a head-up display, I'm not seeing many things missing here that I would really want for. So if you really love your toys, stretch to the HSE spec. So the thumbnail for the video said that this car had a fatal flaw, and I also said that the owner of it doesn't like it very much at all, and that's being kind. In fact, they said to me, feel free to rip the absolute piss out of our car because they can't stand it. So I'm not going to hold back here. So there's a couple of things. The reliability stats of this car are not very good, but then again, that's not groundbreaking news because every single Range Rover ever has scored poorly in reliability, just about. They are just not reliable cars, and the owner or the head of Jaguar Land Rover a long time ago said that they had quality issues, admitted it. It's well known that their quality is not one of their strong points, and so there's always going to be a few extra issues with this compared to, say, a Toyota product. But the ownership experience of this car, for the guy I bought it off, has been quite enlightening to hear about. And hilariously, he doesn't just have one Velar, he currently has two. So I'm getting two examples of two different cars that have had lots and lots of problems from him to go with the stats about reliability and all the things I've been reading in the forums that people have been saying to back it up. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of these issues, and hopefully you can get some context around why this could be a red flag. So the engine problems are the main thing that I want to focus on here, and they appear to be more widely reported with the diesel engines. And interestingly enough, the other car he's got is the lower displacement diesel engine, and he doesn't even drive it. It's actually his sister's, and he's looking after it for her. And after the issues he's had, he's scared to physically drive it, so he just sits in his driveway and he doesn't do anything with it. So I took some notes from the owner about a wee story regarding the other Velar he's got, which I think is worth just telling you and reading to you. So this car was under warranty, and in the second week of ownership, or him having it from his sister, They heard a rattle at idle and coolant started leaking and it led to an engine warning indicator. The dealer wasn't interested at first until they persisted and demanded somebody from Range Rover take a look. They sent the AA to have a look and to their surprise found a coolant pipe with a botched repair. This fault was eventually repaired, but he was without the car for a couple of weeks. Not ideal. Fast forward to 8 weeks into ownership of the car and they noticed a diesel smell in the cabin which became stronger, and so they took it for a drive, opened the windows, and yeah, it was really not sounding or smelling good. Again, Range Rover were slow to react but eventually took the car in for diagnostics. After a week they reported the engine, transmission, auxiliaries had to be removed at a cost of £13,000 to £15,000, and based on their findings this work was not covered under warranty because a service interval had been missed before they took delivery of the car. After more delays and phone calls they finally agreed to repair the fault, but in doing so they found more faults with the exhaust system and they found the source of the initial rattle. A weld on a stainless steel exhaust shroud had failed, and as usual this was not covered under warranty either. Fast forward to present day and they'd been without their car for about 10 weeks. They were given a rental which was a much lower spec and size car, and yeah, essentially didn't feel like they were meeting their obligations to get the car fixed in a timely manner. So this was a very costly situation in the end, and there was thousands spent on fixing the car, some of which he actually got under warranty. He ended up spending about £6,000 of his own money, but overall it was a disaster, really stressful, and generally just didn't feel like they were trying to meet their obligations at all. And yeah, he just wants rid of the car and hasn't been able to sell it yet. But the whole thing was just a complete farce. The main thing seems to be with this particular problem that the 2-litre engine loses engine oil prematurely. They don't really know if it's because of something to do with the turbo or something else, but it seems to just drain of oil. I mean, there was like 4 litres of oil put into it, and then like in a very short space of time it was gone. So these are like really major quality issues, really fundamental things, and I've read lots of people having similar ones. See the sunroof? It's got a massive crack in it, but the car still actually drives. However, the owner is actually waiting to see if they can get a replacement for it, and they basically can't give him one. They can't actually get the part at all. They're like, we don't know when we're going to get this part. It's on back order and we've got no idea when it's coming in. No sort of commitments whatsoever made about this, and this was months ago. And he's like, well, what if I couldn't drive the car? Like, it's cracked just now, so it's okay, but what if it was actually completely screwed and there was a hole in the roof? Doesn't matter, they can't get the parts. And this is another part of the problem, along with other ancillary issues around the car. He's got issues with hoses and all sorts of stuff he's mentioned on this particular car. So it's different cars, different issues. Not an engine issue with this one yet, but other issues in the car. But he basically said that's the main thing, is that even if things break, you can't actually get them fixed because they don't have the parts. The lead times are so ridiculous and their supply chain's so messed up and overwhelmed, they can't get the parts. So you could put your car in, even under warranty, and be like, oh yeah, cool, give me another car then, give me a courtesy car. And they're like, we don't even have courtesy cars, we've run out. So what would happen then? They'd have to give you a higher car. They're like hen's teeth as well. So there's a lot of risk factors associated with actually getting one of these cars. And as I say, they went on, they will fix some of these problems. So if you're getting a newer one, you might not have to worry about this too much. But if you're thinking about buying one of these at this age, like a 2019 or a pre-facelift, you really need to have a think about this, because particularly if it's out of warranty, you could be looking at some serious risk and seriously major repair bills if things go wrong. Because clearly, if it's not absolutely definitely a warranty case, Range Rover, they're washing their hands of it. So when I say fatal flaw, that's kind of what I'm meaning here. And I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comments are going to say to me, hang on a minute, you've got your facts wrong here, whatever. I'm just passing on the information I got from the owner here. And the fact that he's got 2 Range Rovers with different problems around the cars shows just that there's so many things wrong with them, and just quality issues generally are obviously a massive problem here. So if you really want a product that's going to be really good quality and reliable, mid-size SUVs, then maybe you want to look at something like the Lexus NX, because that will never let you down. But generally, most of its rivals are going to be less of a reliability risk than this thing. And then there's the price. This thing starts from 56 grand new, going up to 76 grand. Can you imagine buying a car for 70 odd grand, driving out the dealership, and you know, you've put a few miles on it, then all of a sudden you need an engine change? I mean, what is that all about? So let's hope that they've really fixed a lot of these issues that's plagued these diesel engines. There was one rumour, or no, it's not a rumour, it's actually true, that somebody had one and after 28 miles the engine failed. Like, seriously, that is absolutely ludicrous. But Because they're such expensive cars, it might mean that if people want to buy one, they're going to go down the used route. And that's why it's so important to highlight these issues, because you go and buy a used one thinking you're saving some money. You really need to have a little fund put aside for repairs, because the chances of you having a car like this, say it's 3 years old, for another 3 years and having no real problems with it are almost nil. So guys, I hope you did enjoy the video, and if you are a Velar owner, please don't hate me. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments either way, so please do leave me one. And if I've got anything wrong, please do correct me. Happily, humble to hear it, as long as you keep it respectful. But if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe as well, because there's loads more coming up on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.